Welcome to Beat 'em Up City. In the 80s and 90s, beat 'em ups were an arcade staple. Kids all over the world lined up to drop their quarters into games like Double Dragon, Renegade, and Final Fight. These games were so popular that many of them were ported to home consoles. But if you were a Sega fan, you were out of luck. Very few of these games ever made their way to the Genesis. Final Fight in particular was a huge success, and the folks at Sega knew they needed a title that could compete with Capcom's quintessential brawler. The answer to the problem of Final Fight was Bare Knuckle, renamed Streets of Rage in the West. It's obvious from just playing a few minutes of Streets of Rage that it was an imitation of Final Fight, but in typical Sega fashion, it has a cooler and edgier style and feel. More importantly though, you could play a simultaneous two-player, unlike that much maligned Super Nintendo port of Final Fight. Genesis was doing what Nintendo didn't. Streets of Rage was a huge success and spawned two sequels, each one boasting new characters and more moves. This copy of Final Fight became a genre-defining franchise. Some might even say that Streets of Rage beat Final Fight at their own game, and it's hard to argue. Streets of Rage had much faster gameplay, 3 playable characters, more martial arts moves, and a much better soundtrack. It also wasn't bogged down by Nintendo's strict censorship, which changed much of Final Fight from its original arcade version. For me, it's pretty obvious that Streets of Rage is the better game. The series would go on to include innovative features like vertical scrolling levels, offensive and defensive specials, dash moves, and throwing enemies off of buildings. Meanwhile, Final Fight had 2 mediocre sequels on the SNES. Little did they know that 30 years later, this imitator would redefine the beat 'em up forever. As the video game market moved toward 3D and arcades began to become obsolete, scrolling beat 'em ups were released with new features and gameplay elements, but they failed to lure gamers away from the cinematic experiences offered by the PlayStation, N64, and Saturn. A few attempts were made to move into the 3D space, but they were mostly very poorly received. The beat 'em up, once arcade royalty, died a slow and painful death. For the next 30 years, retro gamers kept the classics alive while they were ignored by the mainstream. However, as the popularity of retro gaming grew and the market became more friendly to independent developers, remakes, remasters, and even sequels of older franchises began to pop up. Meanwhile, French indie studio Lizard Cube had just finished a remaster of another Sega classic, Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap. After seeing that this game was successful, CEO Ben Fouquet wanted to give Streets of Rage the same treatment, not because he saw dollar signs, but simply because Streets of Rage was a favorite of his when he was growing up. Instead of a remake, Fouquet and DotEmu, a publisher that specializes in remakes and remasters, acquired the rights from Sega to produce a sequel. Streets of Rage 4 was released in April 2020 and was a critical success, receiving a Gold Award from Famitsu and being nominated for the Best Action Game at the Game Awards of 2020. As of April 2021, the game has sold 2.5 million copies and launched a very successful DLC expansion. And that brings us to today, where Streets of Rage 4 has redefined the beat 'em up, a genre long forgotten in the mainstream, but never in our hearts. What DotEmu has created here is so much more than a remake or a sequel to Streets of Rage. This game takes everything we loved about brawlers and puts a modern face on it, then amps every aspect up to 11 while retaining the charm and feel of the original trilogy. The very DNA of this game shows that it is a labor of love. The character, level, and enemy designs are all unmistakably Streets of Rage. The soundtrack retains the groove and coolness of the 16-bit era without being chiptunes, and there are even hidden throwback stages where you fight some familiar enemies in a 16-bit universe. Streets of Rage 4 marks the first game in the franchise to be released across all major platforms, meaning you can play this one on your PS4, Xbox One, Switch, PC, Mac, or even Linux. no one has to feel left out due to console war era exclusivity. In addition, Streets of Rage 4 natively supports online play. This kind of game is always more fun with a friend, and now that friend doesn't even have to be in the same city as you. Unfortunately, cross-platform play is not supported. These improvements alone are bringing the experience to a new level, but the true redefinition of the genre can be found in the gameplay. Historically, beat-em-ups have been somewhat tedious. By today's standards, there's not much to them at all. You walk around, you press one button over and over again. It can get really boring. There's a lot of copy and paste enemies. There really isn't much strategy involved, and the difficulty mostly comes from cheap AI. Your moveset is usually really limited. You have like one combo, maybe a special move. There's really not that much going on at all. And strategy, tactics, it doesn't really exist. You just kind of walk around and hit stuff and hope that they don't hit you first. But Streets of Rage 4 has surprisingly deep gameplay. The first thing I noticed was the combo counter, which is nothing new. Games like Sengoku 3 and Guardians had combo counters decades ago. However, keeping that combo going is not just a matter of knowing your character's moves. Positioning and knowledge of every enemy on screen are crucial, not only to getting longer combos and higher scores, but also just surviving the level at all. Many enemies have very sneaky methods of breaking your combo. You need to know where all the on-screen foes are and what tools they have, as well as how to answer those tools. You can use juggles, wall bounces, okizeme, and more as all different kinds of methods to extend and expand your combos. It's totally possible to complete entire levels in a single combo, but this is extremely challenging and can only be done by very high-level players. With a total of 6 difficulty levels and 12 unique stages, Streets of Rage 4 challenges the player to attempt the highest score possible and complete each level with the exclusive S rank. There are also several other gameplay modes, including arcade, survival, and boss rush. There's tremendous variety here and a lot of reasons to keep coming back, making it have the highest replay value of any beat-em-up game that I personally have ever played. Each character has his or her own set of moves and a unique playstyle, and just when you think you've mastered one, you can unlock alternate moves to change up your moveset and modify that playstyle. Even if you master all 7 characters, you can still unlock and play as classic versions of the Streets of Rage cast. Depending upon which character you choose, your handling of the various situations that arise will be completely different. The large variety of enemies and unique skills make the gameplay extremely deep. Planning and execution are absolutely crucial. Decades after the genre was put to rest, Streets of Rage 4 has added a tremendous amount of depth and variety to the beat-em-up, redefining the genre in the process. If others follow suit, we could be looking at a brawler renaissance, which makes me ask the question, I saw Double Dragon Neon a few years back, now we've got Streets of Rage 4. Capcom, what do you got? Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Let me know your thoughts on Streets of Rage 4 in the comment section below. If you would like to support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon at the link in the description. You can also find my Twitch and social media there as well. I post and stream sometimes. So thank you once again, and until next time, game over.